I ended up getting into another relationship with an addict, and I went through that codependency, and all of a sudden, for some reason, I changed and thought, okay, I'm going to fix this person. I messed up enough, but I'm going to fix this guy. And it ended up in assault. It was one evening it happened. He dragged me through broken glass. He pinned me to the floor and stuff like that. And I got into a really bad depression. I spent basically 2 months in isolation, just using and drinking every single day.
And welcome to another episode of Carpe Diem Living the Podcast. I am your host, Shane Gitmed, and today we are talking to someone named Tamar, and she has a very inspiring story that I'm so excited to hear and just to get to know more about her. So Tamar, take it away and tell us about you and your background with holistic health.
First of all, Shane, thank you so much for having me. I totally appreciate the invite on your show. I always like to start my story telling people that I had an amazing upbringing. I had two parents that loved me very much. I was actually born in the Netherlands and then moved over to Canada when I was a year old. So I've been in Canada most of my life, but they were very loving parents. They were so good to us. I have a younger brother as well. And we ended up moving around quite a bit after we left our initial destination, which is in Alberta, if anybody knows where that is. And so we came out to the coast, the West Coast, and because we had moved around a bunch because of my dad's profession, I got incredibly shy. And so it was always that having to fit in again. And I think that was probably my earliest experience of wanting to fit in and wanting to be a part of. And then, of course, as I grew up, things were still good with my family, but I went into high school and I was terrified because in elementary school, you have your group of friends for the whole entire year. And I would get used to meeting people and make friends again. But something in high school made it a lot more different. It was harder to meet people. You were all in separate classes. And I just remember being crazy shy. And I wasn't super outgoing. I did good in school, I wasn't terrific in school by any means. But when I was 14, I went out with some friends and I got drunk for the first time. Now, alcoholism does run in my family, not with my parents directly, but beyond that. And I never really knew about that. Our family was very open about drinking. It wasn't like shunned or anything like that. And so when I first got drunk, I remember that feeling of everything felt right in the world. Like my life went from black and white to color. And I felt like I could be funny. I felt like I fit in. People would laugh at me. So essentially, I felt like I was that person now that I thought others wanted me to be. And so the sad part is though, and with alcoholism, is that when you start, you can't stop. And that kind of started a chain reaction. After a couple of years, I wasn't scared to put anything in my body. So I started using other types of drugs. And then, of course, when I graduated, which was barely, I'm super grateful that I graduated when I did, but all my friends were going to college and university. And here I was like, what are you guys doing? Come on, there's so much more fun to be had. And we're in our late teens, early 20s. And so I continued that party lifestyle. And I actually was a very good soccer player. My dad had coached me all throughout my young life. And I remember the coach of the BC women's team, which could have led to being on the Canadian team, had phoned me up one Friday. And of course, I was drinking with some friends. And he said, hey, we'd love to have you at these tryouts. And I'm like, yeah, that would be amazing. And I told my friend, and we're like, yeah, let's drink to that. And I was so hungover that Sunday that I missed out on that opportunity. And that's just one of the many opportunities that my drinking, like I didn't realize what the consequences would be of that. And then in my mid-20s, I ended up becoming very codependent in relationships. I had a very rough 4-year relationship. I went into just the one-night stands, just not knowing what I wanted, but seeking that love from other people constantly, right? Seeking that approval. I did it when I was younger with my dad as well. And then I ended up getting into hard drugs. And honestly, looking back now at that time, it grossed me out because I had such a great upbringing that I could have never imagined I'd be in a crack house downtown wanting to get my next fix. This lasted for quite a few years. I ended up getting into another relationship with an addict, and I went through that codependency, and all of a sudden, for some reason, I changed and thought, okay, I'm going to fix this person. I messed up enough, but I'm going to fix this guy. And it ended up in assault. It was one evening it happened. He dragged me through broken glass. He pinned me to the floor and stuff like that. And I got into a really bad depression. I spent basically 2 months in isolation, just using and drinking every single day. And I ran into a friend of mine, my best friend from high school, actually. We had grown apart for a few years while I was in my really dark stage. And when I met up with her again, she was one of those people, and we're still best friends today, that I was like, okay, I got to stop using because this person's coming back in my life. That must be a sign. I decided, okay, I'm going to stop using. Of course, I got into a relationship again right away because I thought that's going to fix me. Maybe I'll get married and stuff like that. So that's exactly what I did. But then I started getting into, because I'm an all-in kind of person, into the dieting. And I had gained some weight because I was drinking about 5,000 calories every weekend.
Oh my goodness.
And that wasn't including the week. And I remember I joined Weight Watchers one time. I think I had about 40 pounds to lose. And because I needed that quick fix, I wasn't willing to do the right thing, like what my body actually needed, what was just eat healthy and exercise. I manipulated the system so much that I'm like, okay, I'm going to eat 1 bag of popcorn for breakfast, 1 bag of popcorn for lunch, 7 oven baked fries. I counted these for dinner, a veggie patty. And if I wanted to give up a beer because I was an alcoholic, I would have a little bit of mayo. And then I would go for a walk because that gave me more points, because Weight Watchers was on the point system. A fantastic program, by the way, but for someone like me who manipulates everything, not so much.
Oh, man.
And that gave me enough room to drink anywhere from 8 to 18 beers per night. And believe it or not, I lost 35 pounds doing that in a very short time.
Wow.
And I could have died because I was also on top of that taking ephedrine diet pills because I needed everything right away. And again, I thought if I just look prettier on the outside, it's going to heal who I was on the inside. So then I ended up getting married, and my ex-husband now, he's an alcoholic as well. We're friends still, but it was just the same stuff, right? We just changed locations. I stopped using harder drugs, but I was still drinking like crazy. And at the end of our 9 years being together, I weighed 215 pounds. I was suffering from depression. I was very unhappily married at the time, and I just wanted to die. And I remember sitting on the floor with a bottle of pills, and I was going to end it because I was tired of hurting the people in my life. And I was tired of living this life and in just these cycles of failure, right? Over and over again. And I had a little dog, a pug, and his name was Rudy. And he was sitting beside me, and pugs have this way of, they look at you and they do that funky little head tilt. And something inside me in that moment made me want to change. And I was like, okay, I don't want to die. I need to try and fight for this. And so in 2012, I decided I needed to change my life. And that was that was the year my life totally changed.
Wow. The roller coaster of events, right? I feel like that's definitely how everyone's healing journey. You think, okay, I'm going to try to fix this and hopefully it'll resolve everything else, right? Like a domino effect. But truly, I view healing journeys as layers. It's once you peel one layer, then you got to dig deeper. And until you really feel completely aligned, then you should continue. And it's so common, especially for women. We think, oh, if we just look really good physically, then everything else will be okay. Everything else will start to feel better. And even for myself, I remember I never got into like crazy like weight loss things or anything, but there was a time when I was really focused on vanity, where I was just like, I just have to be that size, or I have to have my hair a certain way just to feel like, okay, I will never not be loved because I look like this. But in reality, it doesn't really even matter. Like, it all comes down to what's going on internally. So after your pug, first, you look amazing, by the way.
Thank you.
So congratulations on all the progress you've made. Pets, they do have a really amazing way of, like, pets are great companions. We know that. But I get what you mean. Like, when they just give you that look sometimes, when you're just really down in the dumps, you snap out of it and you're like, oh shoot, like I can't do this. I can't just sit here. And dogs are very therapeutic, which is why we have animal support dogs and just like dogs for PTSD. There's so many things that dogs do for us. I have 2 of my own. So do you still have Rudy, or you have?
No, he's long since passed, but yeah, he was so cute.
Oh, cute. Do you have another pet now?
No, tempting, very tempting,
Yeah.
but I know how much work they are when they're babies. So,
Oh, yes, no, I get it. Especially mine are much older now. Like one of them is 6 and the other one's 8. And they're going to, yeah. So I understand. It's been a long time since I raised puppies too. And I have a 3-year-old. So it's just, yeah, it's a lot. So after you had that epiphany, okay, I need to not continue on doing this to myself and to my body. So what were the first steps of changing your life? Did you go to rehab? Did you go into AA, or what was your next step?
so actually, my first instinct was, okay, I'm 215 pounds. And like I had before, if I just weigh less,
Mhm.
I'll be more beautiful and people will love me and my life is just going to be better. And so I actually started off making a New Year's resolution, which I don't do anymore. It's just a daily resolution. And I thought, okay, I'm going to lose 75 pounds. So I decided to go to the gym. After the first month, I was struggling because I knew how to work out and I was just going through the motions. And I decided, okay, I need to hire a trainer. If I'm serious about this, which I was, and I was desperate enough, like I'd hit that bottom, the point where I stopped digging, where I'm like, I got to do anything it takes to do this. And I hired a personal trainer. And so I remember sitting with her and we found out we actually went to high school together. We were in gymnastics together. We were terrible.
Wow.
And so we had a good laugh about that. But she asked me, Tamar, what's your number one goal to get out of this? And I'm like, I would love to be comfortable in my own skin. I would love to fit into a bikini and go to Las Vegas and sit by the pool at one of those amazing pool parties that you see on TV. That was my goal. And she laughed at me and she's, okay, then let's get at this. And it was interesting because, of course, I'm an all-in kind of person. And again, whatever she told me to do, I did. I worked out, even though she said 5 days a week is fine, 4 days a week. I did 7 days a week at the gym.
Right.
I'm like, I'm going to be the A student. I want the gold star.
Mhm.
You tell me to eat chicken, rice, and broccoli. That wasn't just what she told me to eat, but I'm like, okay, every day you're going to eat chicken, rice, and broccoli. And then I'd have one treat meal every weekend. And I did that religiously. But there was one big issue is I was an alcoholic. I had gone so far into this that I'm like, okay, what can I do? Because I know when I start drinking, I can't stop. And I've proven it to myself over and over. That's why I no longer drink anymore. And so I decided that I was going to have 3 beer. If my husband and I went out to friends, I was going to bring 3 beers with me. So I'd have to go physically to the store to get more. But I was going to get a half a bottle of NyQuil and chug that so that I would pass out at the end of the night. And so I would do this on the weekends fairly regularly when I felt, okay, I need more drinks. I got to have my NyQuil so I can fall asleep. And I was losing weight and I was doing really well. But then my husband and I decided to go out for a weekend. We went away and I brought 1 bottle of wine because I was so convinced that I had it together. I think I had lost about 50 or 60 pounds by that point. And I'm like, I can do this. I'm going to go away for the weekend. And we got a nice place overlooking the ocean I thought I'm going to bring 1 bottle of wine. And I swore that was all I'd need. We ended up the first night, we had a box of wine, a case of beer, and ran a $200 bar tab. And the week carried on. And I remember my personal trainer at the time, she actually had said, hey, you know what, if you need help, I know recovery. I used to be an alcoholic. And I'm like, I don't need that. And of course she knew because I was doing the signs. I would brag about how little I drank and how I was doing so wonderful. And that's the sign. People who don't have an issue with alcohol don't have to convince other people that they don't have an issue with alcohol. It just goes without saying. And so that weekend, I feel like I hit another low and I was like, okay, I don't have control over this. And so I phoned her up and she said, no problem, I can help you. So I started to go to meetings and I started to meet people that I could relate to. They would tell me their story and I'm like, holy smokes, I'm exactly like these people. And I never saw myself as someone with a problem because I was a very functioning alcoholic. Like I had hit lows, but I was for the most part able to keep a job down, towards the end. The early years, not so much, but the later years I was able to. And that kind of just started the ball rolling because I had to start working on my mental self. I had to start owning my life. And that was the big thing, owning the life I had created for myself. And that was always very hard for me to do. So it was a very humbling process. And then cleaning up my mess and going back and, hey, I'm so sorry I did this to you. And I would listen to people. They'd get upset with me, but very lovingly, and say, just don't do it again. We like the path you're on. And so that first year, I actually lost 75 pounds. I ended up getting sober. But of course, if you don't develop a healthy mindset, that can start to slide. And that's exactly what happened to me a year later. I started to get complacent again.
Yeah. No, it's true. I think especially when you're struggling with any type of addiction, it's from my own, since I personally don't have experience with that, but I've seen people that I care about struggle with alcoholism and other types of drugs. And it is hard from the other point of view when you see your loved one just struggling, and it's no matter what you're telling them, it's just either one day they'll say, yes, I'll do better. And then all of a sudden it starts all over again. And from the other point of view, from someone like me, it's definitely that compassion, showing them that grace instead of making them feel ashamed. It's more so the support and the love that, yes, I'm not happy with what you're doing, but I'm still going to love you anyway and be here for you when you do fall. So it is a very tricky thing, especially when you're new to all of that. And I'm so glad you had that support system, because without the support system, it's really hard to overcome anything that you're going through. Yeah, so that's great that you got sober. And I can see that it's like a yo-yo, right? Like you gain the weight and then you lose the weight. And that's crazy that you're even able to do that. Because I know for myself, like unless I'm like, I really stick to something, I am not yo-yoing. It's either all the way on the other side or where I want to be. But I do love, you mentioned this several times, of how you're an all-in type of person. And I think that's beautiful, because when you are committed to something, you're not just going that 90, 95%, you're like 200%. So I think, especially if in your case, like having that mindset, the strong mindset, that's like your foundation, right? So if like, I'm going to stick to my guns on this, you're going to thrive regardless.
Mm-hmm.
So that's wonderful. So since you've gone through this recovery journey, how long has it been since you've had your first drink, if you don't mind me asking?
My last drink?
Your last drink. I'm sorry. Yeah, last drink.
It was June 17th, 2012. So just over 8 years ago.
Oh, yeah. That is amazing. And like now, so with beer, okay, I know there's some people that would dabble with both types, because I don't know, like with the person that I knew that was having alcohol related issues, was they used to start on the low end of just beer, and then it got into the hard alcohol. Would you say that is a sign of something's going on, just from like your point of view? Because coming from someone that doesn't understand, that hasn't dealt with it, if you start to notice them, it's like a slippery slope, right? If you're getting into the harder drugs or harder alcohol beverages.
It is. And I think, so there's this misconception that people have to have an abusive upbringing or have to go through trauma to be an alcoholic or have a problem. But it happens like, so for me, I can use food again as example, because this is something I've struggled with my whole life. When we ingest something that we could potentially be addicted to, it's scientifically proven now that it does something to us chemically. The craving starts. So you may come home from work and be like, oh man, I'm really stressed out. I'm going to have a glass of wine, or I'm going to have a beer. And you start the ball rolling, and then I like that, I'm going to have another one. And after a few, most people would be like, whoa, getting a little buzz, got to stop. I don't want to feel like crap tomorrow. But with someone that has an addiction, they keep going. And they may recognize it a little bit at the beginning and go, oh, okay, you know what, I probably should slow down. But again, they do it again and they do it again. And I think the reason people progress to harder alcohol is because it's more potent. So it can get you to where you want to go quicker. For me to get drunk, I would have to drink at least 12 to 18 beers, where like 6 beer, that was like an appy for me. And that was like, let's get the night started. But of course, the harder alcohol was better because it was higher alcohol content, and it just became more, I was broke. I was $75,000 in debt when I quit. But it just became, it's more efficient, right? You need a little bit more. And that's with drugs too. Like a lot of people don't realize that you might start off with smoking marijuana, but then if you are an addict and you need that, you might graduate to harder stuff. It's really the way you respond to it.
And we hear it even more often than not now, like the terms of escapism, that people use drugs and alcohol to escape their reality. And I feel like part of this, comes from like the culture we live in is, oh, you're stressed out, have a drink. Or, oh, it's just, we're trained even since we're little, like, oh, it's fine, just eat this or drink this and you'll be okay. And so that's why even for myself, like I told myself that I used to be really into wine. Like I used to even have a full wine rack before I became a mom. But honestly, especially since I've become more active within the holistic lifestyle, I have literally zero interest even having a glass at the end of the night after my son's asleep or anything. I used to in the very beginning, but now I just think about it, I'm like, what kind of example am I setting for him if when I'm stressed out, oh, mom's got to have a glass of wine now. We don't think that the kids are listening or even just small children in general, but they remember that. And I'm not knocking on anyone else who does this at all. I'm just speaking for myself, by the way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think I know that especially with kids, like they really do pay attention and they remember. So I chose to be a better example of, instead of doing something that is harmful to the body, technically, I'd rather do an activity. Hence why I'm so big on self-care. If I can even just take my dogs on a walk, if I can go bike riding, for you, soccer. So I have to ask, did you get back into soccer? Do you play on it during your spare time at all?
No, I never did. And because I was so out of shape for so long, of course, after that, but fitness has become something that's a big part of my life. I actually used to travel for work before COVID hit, but in that first 6 years that I was sober, I got incredibly complacent. And I just thought, hey, I've graduated. I'm sober now. I lost 75 pounds. I feel amazing. But you mentioned something about mindset, and that is what's gotten me through all this, is because I wasn't developing that growth mindset. It was just, I'm an all-in person. I know that I can achieve this, but I started to fall back on stuff and I became less and less active. And actually in 2019, I'm like, okay, something has got to change again. And I'm like, I need to, because I had surgery, I have osteoarthritis in my knees. So that doesn't help with the soccer thing. But I'm like, I got to start doing something for my mental health and my physical health. And because I had actually gained half the weight back early 2019. And I'm like, no, this has got to change. And that's when I really started focusing, what am I putting into my body? How am I treating it? And what is my vision for my future? And last year's when I started my podcast, and earlier this year, I started my business for the first time. And it's all focused around my journey into health. And how do I do resistance band training when I was traveling on the road. I brought that home. It was perfect when all the gyms shut down. I can't do the things that I used to do because of my knees, but it's very top of mind that if I don't do that kind of stuff, like I went for a walk this morning when it was still dark out and it feels amazing. It's a good start to your day.
Yeah, absolutely. And even for me, before I really got into the holistic lifestyle, what I did from my own mindset, because I know sports or even certain physical activities, when you fall in love with that, oh my gosh, you just feel so great. It's the accountability, it's the release, right? So for me, what helped me growing up was kickboxing. I was taking kickboxing in high school. And I just remember every day I was looking forward to going, because anything I felt during that time, stress-wise, and I'm a perfectionist, so if things didn't go a certain way, it really weighed heavy on me. So the one way to let it out appropriately was on a bag. I would imagine what was frustrating me that day as the bag, and then I would just go all in, kicking, punching. And I've seen that time and time again with other people, that they find a sport they really love, and then that's what actually helps them stay busy. And so they don't fall into their bad habits or into things that could be harmful to them. Mm-hmm. So for me, I would, especially if someone likes to be athletic, I suggest that. I always suggest if there's something going on, even if it's not a sport you've already been playing, try something new. Maybe you'll like it. There's one sport I've never gone to try yet, but rugby. I've always been fascinated with rugby. And I'm like, dang, that'd be so cool, because I mean, people don't imagine it or picture it with me that I like to be like aggressive in a game, but I swear, like I would go all in if I had the chance. So I'm just waiting. So in Canada, I don't know if you guys have this. Have you seen like the big bubble? There's a person inside and it's
Bubble soccer.
Okay. Yeah. So
I want to play it.
it looks so, you could do that during COVID. Come on. That's an exception. I would be down to start my own, like every Saturday bubble soccer.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So just something I just know. And that's why with my son, it's funny because I thought he would be really into sports, but that's my bad, because not all boys are like die hard into sports. I learned that on my own, but with him, he's so into music. So one thing I learned to help him with whenever he does get frustrated, and this is a mindset thing, to switch the mood and not let your emotions overcome. And so with him, anytime he feels anything, or even just to motivate him to clean up his toys, we sing. And that is the one way that gets to him. So I just know with everyone, there's always that one thing that attracts you to be like, oh, attracts your attention, whether it be sports, whether it be music. But yeah, I just think finding an outlet would definitely help with anyone, especially if they have an addictive personality or addictive habits. That's definitely one way. So that's awesome. So now that you're back into optimal health with the weight loss and the mindset, are there any certain recipes that you've come to love out of now eating healthier? Because I always ask this with guests, what is one holistic type of thing that you like to prepare now for yourself, whether it be a beverage or a dish?
Oh, that's a good question. I have started making these. So I switched to keto because I recognized that I also had a terrible addiction to sugar.
Oh.
You give me one cookie, I'm going to eat the whole tray. So I still do have carbs once in a while, but I know that's my nemesis. So I've started making these smoothies, and I'll blend up avocado because, of course, I try to get some healthy fats in all my meals. And I'll put mint leaves, spinach, kale, lemon juice. I put a little bit of monk fruit in there because I like monk fruit instead of like Splenda or stevia or anything, because I find it has a terrible aftertaste. And I blend that up, and it's just because of the avocado, it's not frothy, but it's just it's creamy and it's very filling because of the avocado in it, and it's very fresh with the mint. So I love stuff like that. And I just try to really stick with lean proteins and as much vegetables I can get. Spinach, I just love. And I like to keep it simple, but I try to keep it as clean as I possibly can, but also being creative, because if you don't, like you nailed it with the sports thing, where if you don't love what you're doing, you're not going to keep doing it. So you have to find what works for you and what works for your body. Now that I've been through this whole health journey and I've tried so many things, it's not like a one size fits all, right? It's figure out what you like, pick some recipes. So yeah, that's probably my favorite recipe because it's so refreshing to have in the morning.
That sounds so good. And I'm a fan of anything in a beverage form, smoothies, or I don't know why it makes me laugh because I think my son got this for me not knowingly, is because, yes, I like having a bowl of fruit or whatever, but if I could just have it in a cup and just like slurp it up, that's much more convenient for me. Cause I'm always so busy, like doing things like with my hands. So I'm not going to sit there and just, I don't know. So if it's in a pouch or like in a cup, great. So with my son, he doesn't like eating oats, blueberries, bananas physically, but if it's all in a pouch where he can just slurp it up, he will. So I'm just thinking, this kid is a lot more like me than I thought. Like I don't even realize. So yeah, even it's funny, like when you're talking about fruits and veggies. So I, for the first time, had Brussels sprouts yesterday. And I'm like, why haven't I gone this a long time ago? This is so crazy. Because I think also so part of my journey was like my allergy situation. So I didn't know what was safe for me to eat, what was not over the years. It was scary because I didn't want an allergic reaction. And just for me, I got into a cycle of, okay, if I have an allergic reaction, take a Benadryl. And now that I'm into holistic medicine, I'm like, nope, I have a more natural way to deal with that. That's the one thing I love is like when you do try different recipes, and like you said, if you don't love it, you're not going to eat it. You're not going to want to deal with it at all. So that's why for me, instead of just buying vegetables just because, I'd rather look up a recipe, see what's all in there, visualize it. Man, this is going to taste really good when I make it. So then when the day I do it, I'm all in. I want to finish it. Like I'm not going to waste it. So I think that's really important if you're not naturally into fruits and veggies. Mm-hmm. So let me see. So do you have a certain recipe book that you follow? Because there's a lot out there nowadays. And I wonder if there's any we could recommend to our listeners.
I don't. Honestly, when I'm inspired by something, when I'm on social media, because I don't love social media, even though in our business, we have to be on there.
Yeah.
I'm very specific at what I look at. I have a lot of friends who are vegan, and I have a friend who's a vegan chef, and she'll post things once in a while. And I'm like, oh, okay, I got to try that. Or I'll try a rendition of that. If it looks fresh or it's something, I want it to be something that fills me up, something that's not going to, after the first couple bites, I'm like, okay, I'm still starving right now. So I always try and look at that blend of healthy fats, especially avocados or olive oil or something like that. So I don't really go by anything specific. I'm more just, if I'm inspired by something, or I like something like chicken strips. I love chicken strips. And obviously when you're doing keto, that doesn't really fall into it. So I learned how to use pork rinds, grind them up, and then put them in egg whites, the chicken, and bake it that way. And so I really look at the food I love, and I'm like, how could I make that so that I'm not eating sugar? So that's what I focus on right now.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good, especially because when you are that mindful, then one, it's easy to track. I didn't like overeat here. And then it's not, because I would hate, especially for myself, I do love my cookies and things too. So what I did as an alternative for myself was I started getting plant-based cookies, because I'm like, okay, if I have just one more extra, it's not going to kill me. Like I know this is the cleaner version. So I transformed my household in that way of, if anything like snack related, especially since my son's a really big snacker, I'm like, I don't mind if it's a healthy version. So for him, he likes tortilla chips. And I'm like, there has to be a better way, because he'll just eat and eat, will not stop. So I got this brand called Siete, and another guest on the show talked about this brand. And basically it's a very clean line of Mexican type of snacks and foods. So for this, it's tortilla chips that are grain-free, dairy-free, and avocado oil.
Really?
Yeah. And you're just kind of, wow, of course, this is a guilt-free type of snack. So then you just feel better. Like it automatically puts you in a good mindset of, oh, okay, I can eat this and not feel bad, or say, oh, I got to burn all this fat later. Because in a way, I used to do that growing up, is like, I'm going to work out really hard, so it's fine if I eat like fries later. I did that. So I understood what you were talking about, trying to balance out the scale in a way so you can still have what you want, but still get the results that you want physically. I get it. It's amazing how far you've come. And I'm just so glad that everything is working out for you, because I know it takes a lot of just that energy and time, and everyone's journey is so different. So I think it's just amazing when anyone can overcome addictions like that have been going on for a long time. So just congratulations again. I just got to give you kudos.
Thank you.
on your recovery. So let's tell our listeners where they can connect with you online.
So you can go to my website. It's www.theroadforward.ca. I just changed that. You can also listen on the Road to Health podcast. And then I like to hang out on Facebook mostly, which is The Road Forward, and it's a Facebook group there. But all my links are on my website. So that's probably the easiest way to go.
Yeah. And all of her links will be in the description, of course. And we do have our podcast insiders group. So Tamar, of course, you're welcome to join the group so our listeners can connect with you there, ask you any questions. If, they have if they just want to say congratulations, just come say hi. So check out our podcast insiders group, everyone. And we'll catch you guys next time. Thank you all so much.